بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضر لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة لسعيها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرور مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
پر محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
بعد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بعد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن فاطمة الزهراء عليه السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجد ببدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به، وسرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. اللهم صل على. فما كانت إلا ساعات وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعليه. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جدا. يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ قال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي، ويا صاحب هودي قد عزمت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. اللهم صل على. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أمه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جدا. السلام عليك يا من اختار الله، وتأذن لي أن أدخل معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي، ويا شابع أمتي قد عزمت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل إن ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب عليه السلام. قال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له: وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيم وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد عزمت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتا يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي قد عزمت لك فدخلت تحت الكساء. اللهم فلما اكتملن جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرف الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وقاستي وهامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم واجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات إني ما خلقت سماعا مبنيا ولا أرضا مدهيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا بمحبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة أبوها وبعلها وبنوها. اللهم صل على. فقال جبرائيل يا رب أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد عزمت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخزك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماعا مبنيا ولا أرضا مدهيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد عزمت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء. فقال لي بي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبيه يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر قبرنا هذا في محفلهم من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال بي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا علي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني برسالة نجيا ما ذكر قبرنا هذا في محفلهم من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله همّا ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمّا ولا طالب حاجتي إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام إذن والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
Can we have a loud salawat for Brother Rafat, please? Jazakallah. Can I now invite Brother Ibrahim for the souls and salam? A loud salawat for him as well, please.
Salawat. Salawat. تو اگر ہوتا تو ایسا نہیں ہوتا غازی. تو اگر ہوتا تو ایسا نہیں ہوتا غازی. قبر عباس پہ زینب یہ صدا دیتی تھی. تو اگر ہوتا تو ایسا نہیں ہوتا غازی. کبھی یثرب تو کبھی سوئے نجف دیکھتے تھے. کبھی تیرے کٹ شانوں کی طرف دیکھتے تھے. شہن اکبر کے کلیجے سے نکالی برچھی. تو اگر ہوتا تو ایسا نہیں ہوتا غازی. ہو گئی ثانی زہرا بھی ضعیف عباس سانس لیتی ہوں مگر میں نہیں زندہ عباس تیرے ٹکڑوں کی قسم تیری بہن ٹوٹ گئی تو اگر ہوتا تو ایسا نہیں ہوتا غازی پیاس میں بھی تجھے آواز دیے جاتے تھے زیر خنجر بھی تیرا نام لیے جاتے تھے گردن شاہ پہ جب شمر چلاتا تھا چھری تو اگر ہوتا تو ایسا نہیں ہوتا غازی میرے ہاتھوں کو بھی رسی سے گیا تھا باندھا میں بھی ہاتھوں کا نہ لے پائی سہارا بھیا جیسے تو زی سے گرا ویسے میں ناکے سے گری تو اگر ہوتا تو ایسا نہیں ہوتا غازی تیری شہزادی یوں در در نہ پھرائی جاتی تو اگر ہوتا تو ایسا نہیں ہوتا غازی قبر عباس پہ زینب یہ صدا دیتی تھی تو اگر ہوتا تو ایسا نہیں ہوتا غازی صلوات
پر محمد و آل محمد صلوات Jazakallah, thank you very much, brother. Now, can I invite Brother Raza and Brother Mehdi for the Marsiya, please? Or Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat.
صلوات پدر کی موت ہے مرنا جوان بیٹے کا سفر جہاں سے کرنا جوان بیٹے کا غضب ہے خون میں برنا جوان بیٹے کا ستم ہے جی سے گزرنا جوان ستم ہے جی سے گزرنا جوان بیٹے کا شباب تھا کہ شہ مشرقین سے چھوٹے محب پیٹو کو اکبر حسین محب پیٹو کے اکبر حسین سے چھوٹے خدا پدر کو نہ دکھلائے مرگ راحت جاں کلیجہ زخمی ہو جب دل کو پھر قرار کہا ادھر تو سینہ اکبر سے گزری نوک سنال لہو در ہوا چشمے ماں لہو در ہوا چشمے ماں میدی سے روا طرف کے جانب گردون گاہ کی شینے زمین ہل گئی ہے کیسیا زمین ہل گئی ہے کیسیا کی شینے پکارتے ہوئے دورے میرے شہید پسار میرے جوان میرے مہرو میرے سعید پسار میرے ہنسی میرے یوسف میرے رشید پسار قریب ہو گئے میدان سے بعید پسار پدر پہ آج نئی واردات ہے بیٹا قبر نہیں مجھے دن ہے کہ رات قبر نہیں مجھے دن ہے کہ رات ہے بیٹا کدھر گئے میرے گل پہ رہن علی اکبر میرے خلیق میرے کم سخن علی اکبر جوان مر گئے غریب الوطن علی اکبر اجاڑ کر گئے میرا چمن اجاڑ کر گئے میرا چمن علی اکبر بلا کے گھر سے یہاں عاشقیاں نے لوٹ لیا دعا ہے کہ مجھے کربلا دعا ہے کہ مجھے کربلا نے لوٹ لیا پکارتے تھے کہ اے شیر پھر پکار مجھے نہیں بتانے کے لاشائی نہ بکار مجھے تیرے فراق میں ہے زیست ناگوار مجھے صدا سنا دے میں صدقے پھرے صدا سنا دے میں صدقے پھرے ایک بار مجھے گلے لگا لو کہ سینہ ہمارا جلتا ہے کلیجہ منہ سے کوئی دم میں کلیجہ منہ سے کوئی دم میں نکلتا ہے پکاری دیوری سے بانوں پہ سر ملا کے نہیں بتاؤ مرہمیں زخمی جگر ملا کے نہیں ستم کے ابر میں میرا قمر ملا کے نہیں علی کے لال والی کہو علی کے لال والی کہو ملا کے نہیں شتاب لاؤ میرے منتوں کے پالے کو تمہیں سے لوں گی میں اپنے مراد تمہیں سے لوں گی میں اپنے مرادوں والے کو یہ ذکر تھا کہ صدائی دور سے ناگا جناب قبلہ کعبہ بائے للہ حضور حال سے بیٹے کے کیا نہیں آگا زبان گئی ہے غلام زبان گئی ہے غلام کی آشا اکھر رہا ہے دم اب موت جان لیتی ہے پکارنے کی بھی طاقت جواب پکارنے کی بھی طاقت جواب دیتی ہے صدا یہ سنتے ہی سلطان بحر و بردورے یہ درد دل تھا کہ تھامے ہوئے جگر دورے کبھی تو فوج پہ مانند شیر نر دورے کبھی ادھر گئے روتے کبھی ادھر گئے کوتے کبھی ادھر دورے لٹی ہوئی وہ کمائی بس تلاش ملی زمین پہ خون میں غلطہ پسا زمین پہ خون میں غلطہ پسا کی لاش ملی
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Assalamu alaikum. Just a few announcements. Would like to start off with a quick Fatiha for the marhum of today's sponsors. I don't have any names right now, but can we all recite Fatiha for all the marhums of everyone who's present here today? Al-Fatiha. As you know, the Majalis over here at Dua Center run on donations and sponsorships by all of you. And for the youth Majalis, we have a lot of Majalis left that need sponsorships. So if you would like to sponsor a youth Majlis in the name of your marhum or whatever, you can come see me after the Majlis and we can get you in somewhere. On that, I would also like to add that I mentioned this yesterday, I'll mention it again today. On 8th Muharram, we're asking everyone कि घर में जो भी आपके अलम है या कुछ भी है, हमारी यहाँ पीछे मातमदारी होगी parking lot में. We're going to have a matamdari in the parking lot. So any alums you have at home, bring them. Any people you know that haven't been coming to the majlises regularly, it's important that if you want to attend a majlis, this is the one you want to attend. So invite your cousins, brothers, everyone. Just invite everyone. On 8th Muharram, we're going to have a matamdari outside. Lastly, we Dua Center have noticed that after the majalis, Munda Maulana Saab stays for a bit normally because he has so many questions from you guys to answer. I know I've seen personally like 3, 4, 5 people after the majalis just staying and asking questions. So on Thursday and on Friday, we've decided to hold designated Q&A times where you can come after the majlis, you stay here, you sit down. He's going to answer any questions that you have. On the ladies' side, if you have any questions for the Maulana Sahib, for Dr. Shaeba, you can talk to any Baji. I think a lot of you know who she is. And on the boys' side, if you have any questions, you'll be able to ask him directly, but if you don't want to ask him directly, you can also let me know. All right? So if anyone has any questions for the Maulana Sahib during the Q&A sessions, come see me after. Or if you're on the ladies' side, come see any Baji after the majlis, okay? Jazakallah. With a loud salawat, can I now invite Dr. Shaeba Rizvi to the member, please? For Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, salawat. Another loud salawat, please.
يا علي أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغه مدحته القائلون ولا يعصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفتن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خير المبشرين والمنذرين حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My dearest mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers, sisters, elders, youngers, we continue with our topic. And we are discussing how science identifies us and how religion identifies us. And what has been said so far is that we reached a point where we said that Hazrat Adam and Bibi Hawa, they are now in heaven. And when they are in heaven, and why are we talking about this? Because this helps us to understand our place in the universe, our role in the universe, and why we're here. When we understand why we're here, we become somebody with a purpose. And that means that you have a purpose, an objective. Your function in this life is not random and coincidental. You did not come here for no reason. There is good reason for why you are here. And that makes a big difference. Imagine somebody who goes wandering around with no purpose in life and somebody who goes wandering around with a specific purpose in life. Everything changes when you have a purpose. Now, what happens in heaven, and why do we see Hazrat Adam and Bibi Hawa being sent to earth? Because there was an important lesson that had to be learned. And when we see Hazrat Adam entering into heaven, then Allah is saying to him, don't go near that tree. So we know there is a tree, but what is this tree signifying? This tree is signifying two things. One thing it is signifying is obedience. That means if Allah says do this, then do that. And if He says don't do this, then don't do that. That kind of obedience is very important. Sometimes we like to know the reason for not going near something. Sometimes we want to know, why should I not do this? Why should I not do that? And it's okay to ask why, because there's always an answer for why. But maybe the people around us don't have that answer, because your imam is one who does have all the answers, but people like me and others around us will not have all of the answers. And so just because we don't know why something happens doesn't necessarily make it unimportant. For example, we learned to use fire before we knew that oxygen is the element that causes the flame itself. But even without understanding the mechanism, it still benefited us. So the important thing is that Allah is teaching Hazrat Adam and Bibi Hawa obedience. Sometimes our parents tell us to do things, and sometimes we don't want to obey them, and we don't want to listen, because for us it's not making sense, and then we just say parents don't understand. One thing we need to realize is that with experience, human beings learn. So we learn through experience. That means that many things we learn are maybe part of us already in our instincts, in our nature, but a lot of things we are learning at that time. Now, obedience becomes one factor, and there's another factor. That tree represented the respect and authority of the Ahlul Bayt. And that means that identifying the Ahlul Bayt as the ultimate hujjat of Allah, the proof and evidence of Allah, and the means to get to Him, and the ones who are our connection and medium to Him, was important. So that's why we had to say, don't go near this tree. Now, who comes and tempts Hazrat Adam and Bibi Hawa to eat from that tree? That's right. So Shaitan comes along. And some have said he came in the form of a snake, so maybe he did. But when he comes, the form is not as important as what he says. What does he say to them to convince them to eat from that tree? What does he say to them to convince them to disobey Allah? Because they would never knowingly disobey Allah, and also they had not really seen any deception and falsehood and lie so far. So this is the first introduction of humanity to deception and falsehood. So what happens is he says to them that if you eat from this tree, first he asks them a question. Would you like to stay in heaven forever? And they say, yes, this is a great place. We would like to stay here forever. There's wonderful gardens around us, lots of things to do. We love it here. Why wouldn't we want to stay here? So he says, okay, if you want to stay here forever, you have to eat from this tree. Now that's actually a lie and the opposite of what Allah had said. Allah had said what? That don't go near the tree. Now, if they had not gone near the tree, then this lesson would not have been needed, perhaps. But they did. Why? Because suddenly he convinced them that you need to go near this tree to stay here forever. So what did he do? He put a doubt in their mind. That doubt that he put in their mind was self-doubt. So self-doubt is very important. We need to understand when we're doubting ourselves and when we're not. We need to understand what our identity is in this world and what our role is. That means, who are you? What is your identity? And what is your role? Do you know the difference between these two? When we say identity and role, identity is your ID. Sure. But what if you don't have a driver's license and you don't have a passport? Then what is your ID? In other words, who are you? If somebody asks you that question, who are you? You will give your name and say, I am Shaeba, for example. But is that what I am fundamentally? In other words, what was I before I was born? Was I still alive at that time or not? We said 7:172 of the Quran says that we were all souls that were testifying to Allah's oneness even before we came to the earth. And that happened when we were created originally. So now the question becomes, who am I before my parents named me Shaeba? Do I have an identity? Before you came and birthed into this world and you were in your mother's womb, and before you were born, in your mother's tummy, as they say, womb, as they say, who were you and what was your identity? Now, many times we look at the word identity and role, and sometimes we mix them up. For example, you have a role when you're at home. You are a son, you are a daughter, you are a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a cousin. Is this who you are as your identity, or is this your role? So distinguishing between identity and role becomes very important. Maybe this is a little difficult. Is this a little difficult? Yes? Okay. Let's make it a little easier. First, let's look at how many roles you have. Number one role you have is that you're at home, you're your parents' child, right? So that's a role. Now that role comes with some responsibilities. What are the responsibilities of the role of being a child at home? Well, you should be obedient to your parents, you should take care of them and listen to them, you should be kind to your siblings, and you should help around the house. These are responsibilities that come with that role. But what if you're the father of the home? Then the father of the home has a different role. The mother of the home has a different role. So everybody has a role at home. But what about when you go to school? When you go to school, are you a son or daughter now? Now you're a student. Excellent. So now your role as a student is different, and you behave differently at school than you do at home because your role is different. You're not going to be helping out in the kitchen at school. You're not going to be maybe doing some domestic chore, doing your homework, watching TV. You're going to be doing the role of a student. Now, what do you do as a student? You take part in class, you make friends, you have classmates, you're a student, there's a teacher, you listen to the teacher, you do your homework, you learn, etc. You do extracurricular activities. Many things come with that role of a student. So you have the role of a son, you have the role of a student. What's another role in your life? Any other role in your life? What about when you are outside in the park with your friends? Now you're not a son, you're not playing the son-daughter role, you're not in the role of a student, now you're a friend. And now you have companions, and now you're going to have fun with your friends and play whatever you're doing, and sports, etc., and you have a different role. Do you see how with each role, your responsibilities change a little bit? You have different responsibilities as a son, as a student, or as a friend. And as you get older, your roles will increase, and your responsibilities will increase. All of that comes and goes. So, for example, you will one day assume the role of a parent. That's different from the role you have here. So, what is staying the same in all of this? When you're at home, when you're at school, when you're in the playground, what stays the same is your identity. Your identity doesn't change. Your identity was the same from the day you were created. What is your identity? Your identity is that you are a creation of Allah. This is your identity. Now is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Because we want to be, if you look at this world, when things are made and branded, like for example, somebody wants a phone and they want to have a phone that's made by this company. They want to wear clothes that are made by that company. They want to wear shoes that are made by that company. Why do we give so much importance to branding? This is the day and age of branding. We grew up in a simpler era. I grew up in a time where, you know, branding was not as important, and you wore whatever you wore. Most of what I wore as a teenager was made in Thailand. You might not even have heard of the country, but that was a time when a lot of things we bought were made in Thailand. Branding is something that is important because you say, look, this was made by so-and-so, this was made by that person. So being made by a manufacturer gives that thing value. You know, one time I went into this store and there was a jacket, and I thought I thought it was like a second-hand store for a moment, because the jacket looked like somebody had run over it a few times, put the lawnmower over it, it had been through a few wars, but they said the jacket was $5,000. And I said, what is there about this jacket that is $5,000? They said, you didn't look at who's made it. Open it up and look at the brand inside. It's branded. It's made by an Italian designer. And so now it has value, and someone will pay for it. So why does it have value? It looked pretty awful to me. But the important thing was that it was made by this person, made by that person. Well, if you are made by Allah, then what better branding could there be than that? What could be more significant in your creation or in your identity than the fact that you were made by Allah? Now, if you weren't made by Allah, you accidentally came into this world, you evolved through some multiverse random collision of particles that caused you to evolve from different animals, and now you're here, well, then it doesn't really matter. Then you're not that important, frankly speaking. You're a random outcome of luck, and whether you live or die makes no difference to anybody. There's nobody watching you. Nobody cares what you do. When you die, you will be finished forever. So I congratulate all the people who believe that to continue with that kind of existence. I'm afraid it's too depressing for me when I have an option that maybe actually I was created for a reason by an intelligent being. I'm not some random mutation of DNA. There's purpose behind my creation. Allah made me in perfect balance for a reason, because He has expectations of me. He wants me to grow. He wants me to improve. He wants to test me. He wants to see me come out of those tests victorious. He wants to reward me. He does love me. He loves me 70 times more, or we should say actually infinity times more than my parents do. Well, that for me is a way better way of looking at life than the other option. So if we identify ourselves as a creation of Allah, that means that He is expecting things from you. And how will you know what He's expecting from you? By your Imam. So your Imam who is present today in the world, though you don't see him, has expectations of you. And that means we have to answer to him. So now your central identity, this is what Iblis was taking away from Hazrat Adam and Bibi Hawa, their identity. He was trying to convince them that you are not a citizen of heaven, but you will only be a citizen of heaven and live here forever. You have a temporary visa right now. You know what a temporary visa is? When you get a visa to go to a country for a month, or 6 months, or a little while. So he told them, you're only here for a little while and you have to eat from this. So he confused them, he deceived them, he lied to them. And they thought that everybody tells the truth. So they accepted what he said, because they had only seen truthhood up till now. They hadn't seen falsehood. So what did he do? He corrupted their sense of identity, and they started to doubt themselves. So what becomes important? That you never doubt yourself. Know how important you are. Know that you are a creation of Allah. Know that you are a follower of your Imam. Know that there are things that are expected of you. And whenever you're in a role, you remember your identity. What is your identity now? Your main identity? You are a follower of your Imam. You are a Shia. You are a lover of the Ahlul Bayt. Now this becomes a big responsibility for you. Now you are not just an ordinary person. There's a difference between you and other forms of life on this planet. Do you think you're the same as all other animals on this planet? Do you see any differences between you and other animals? Are there any other animals who are wearing clothes? Are there any other animals who maybe wear glasses when they can't see very well? Are there other animals who have built homes, who have changed the atmosphere and climate with air conditioning and heating? Are there animals who cook their food? Are there animals who build grocery stores? There is an incredible difference between you and every other animal on the planet. It's kind of obvious that we're different. Nowadays, we have to debate this, actually. Nowadays, there's a debate going on because, for example, the vegan movement will say that what we're doing is unnatural. They'll say that, well, look, all other animals you see, they don't steal milk from other animals and you steal milk from the cow. But that's because the Quran told me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Yasin said that Allah gave to us the goat and the cow so that we could benefit from it. So it's for us. Other animals, maybe we should stop riding horses too, because other animals aren't riding horses, although I saw a monkey riding one once. But the point is that there's so many things that you're going to hear now that are going to try and compare you to other animals, but we're forgetting the obvious thing. I mean, animals don't cook their food, but we do. Maybe we should just eat everything raw. So this whole idea that we are just like all other animals, and the idea, you see, what happened was, we're against eating meat now, many people, and there's a whole movement about that. Why? Because farming practices are cruel to animals, which is true. That is very true. We don't follow proper Islamic rules and regulations with farming. It's all about corporate greed. It's all about mass production. It's all about getting as many chickens and goats and everything out as much as possible. The corporations don't care how cruel the animals are treated. They don't care what they're fed. They don't care how they grow them. They will have that chicken ready for you in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, that chicken is on your plate. Imagine that. Egg to your plate in 2 weeks. When I used to visit my grandmother back in Pakistan when I was a kid, and there was a little chicken, like after 6 months, that chicken would be a little bigger. How do they get them to be so big so quickly? Growth hormones, and feeding them unnatural foods, and lots of antibiotics. And yes, we're doing bad things to animals. That is being done. That doesn't mean that that doesn't mean we're not carnivorous. That means we have to regulate ethically our farming practices. Yes, they're maybe draining too much milk from cows. That doesn't mean we're not supposed to drink milk from a goat or a sheep or a cow. That means that we have to be ethical in our practices. These are things our Prophet did. Eating meat, drinking milk, this is sunnah. This is something that was meant for us. Allah gives us something and we say, oh no, we don't want this now. So what are we doing? We are superseding the higher ethical body. Allah is the one who laid down the laws. There's a reason why. If you look at the world, why is it that everywhere in the world good is good and bad is bad in general? Why is it that when you look, no culture, have you ever seen a culture that said murdering is excellent? And if somebody murders enough people, we're going to make them prime minister. You should steal as much as you can, because when you steal things, you're going to get rewarded. We're going to make you mayor of the city because you're the biggest thief here. Lying is wonderful. We never think of that as good things. They're always bad things. That means that there is in us, in our instinct, something we are born with. Everybody is born with this. They are aware of what is wrong, what is right. It's called morality. It's called conscience. It's called your inner ruh, your nafs. It is something that whispers to you. This is the evidence of your creation. The fact that you were made, and you were made with this nature. There is a nature within human beings that makes all of us have something in common. And so, in summary, today, sorry if it was a little bit heavy, but I want to tell you about your identity. Your identity is that you are a follower of your Imam. So when you are at home, you are a son or a daughter, but before that, you are a follower of your Imam. That means that you are going to do what your Imam would expect you to do as a son and daughter. So you have high expectations. When you are at school, you are a student, but you are a follower of your Imam. You will go to school, and people will say things that may be true or may not be true, things that will guide you and misguide you. And you have to have the confidence to know what is right and what is wrong and do what is right. And that means that don't be fooled like we were originally. Humanity was deceived in heaven. And that is why we ended up coming here. Why were they deceived? They were deceived because we doubted ourselves. We doubted ourselves and we thought Allah did not want us to stay in heaven with some permanence. But He did. He sent us there forever. And that is where you're meant to be. But when people make us doubt ourselves, what happens in school? Sometimes a student will go with a group of friends and do something that maybe their parents wouldn't want them to do, their imam wouldn't want them to do. Why are they doing it? They're doing it because it gives them value. If you see a bunch of kids doing something you know is wrong, but you go there and you do it with them, that's because now they will value you. They won't value you unless you do that activity with them. They won't value you unless you come and break the rules with them. And if you don't, then you're a chicken, you're scared, you're a mama's boy. I don't know what they say nowadays. I gotta go back to the 80s and go back to my middle school days and the peer pressure. You weren't cool then. You were a buck chicken and you were a coward and what's wrong with you mama's boy, pretty boy. Oh, you don't listen to mommy. They would make fun of you if you did not disobey your parents. That means that I thought, oh, now I'm not going to have value amongst this friend and this society unless I actually go and break all these rules. And when you do, then they go, yeah, very good, now you're one of us. So that's the herd mentality again. That's what we have to be warned against. We have to have the confidence to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to do that. Why? Because yes, there might be 5 of you doing this right now, but I have an imam that I follow. And what's more important to me is what my imam thinks of me. Not the Facebook likes I have, not the Instagram friends I have. I just need one like, one love. And that is from my imam. If my imam approves of me, then it doesn't matter if the whole world doesn't like me, as long as I'm doing what's right, because at the end, if there is a day of judgment, and we are going to be standing there in front of our imam, then we have to answer. If there isn't, and everything's random, and you're just coming from some other bacteria, then it doesn't matter. Hey, do what you want. But if there is, then be ready. Be ready to answer. And so your value, we have to change what defines us and what gives us value. Am I valuable because all these people are valuing me who don't want to obey Allah? Or am I valuable because Allah, who created me, values me? Where does my value lie? When you read Nohas, Salam, Marsiya, when you read this for the Azza of Imam Hussein, what is the value there? Is it about how many posters people made of you and how many pictures of you are on Facebook? Is it about how big your name is written in writing there that you're coming? Is it about how many people saw you on YouTube and how many views you got? Is it about how many albums you produced and put out there? Do you think that this is what your imam is looking at? Your imam is saying, oh, look, this one, he's so famous on Facebook, I really like him. Oh, look at this one. He got 1 million views on YouTube. This is my favorite Noha Khan now. Your Imam Hussein is saying, yes, I like this one. You only read it in Imam Barga and you didn't get any videos and you have no value. What do you think Bibi Sayyida is looking at when she sees what your value is? When you're standing on the day of judgment, Facebook and Instagram fame will not be there. What will be there is the nur of your belief and what status Bibi Sayyida gives you as an azadar of her child. And that status will be the most important. Everything here will disappear. And all the commercialism and all the money that's involved in all of this fakeness that's coming in is not going to be important on the day of judgment. What will be important on the day of judgment is that Bibi will look at you and say, you did the zikr of my son. You read a Noha, you read a Marsiya, you read a poem, you gave a speech, and you did it with the sincerity of your heart. Hazrat Bilal was the muazzin of the Holy Messenger, and he used to do azan like this, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. He could not say ashhadu an, he would say seen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Imagine somebody comes now and does azan in one of our mosques and says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. What will we do? We'll say, kisko bitha diya? Kam se kam koi sahi talaffuz to hota. अरे बच्चे को बिठा दिया, किसी बड़े को लाते, कुछ तौर तरीका तो होता. अरे ये क्या है? लोग नहीं सुनेंगे, मातम नहीं होगा, कोई आएगा नहीं. That's what they said to the Prophet. The Arabs came and said, "Oh Prophet, look at this one with the beautiful voice, and that one with the beautiful voice, and this one with all the surr and tal and everything." And the Prophet said that, no, Bilal will give the azan. Why? Because he has a pure heart. And when he gives the azan, he gives it with a pure heart. So when you are reading and reciting about Imam Hussein, the purity of your heart is the only thing that's important. And I assure you, I can hear the most beautiful voice, and it might moisten the eyes, but the amount of tears that are shed when I hear the pure voice of a child reciting the Masayib of Imam Hussein, because that child has purity. That child has not been tainted and corrupted by the need for fame, and the need for recognition, and the need for likes, and the need for the posters, and the need for, lots of videos out there and views. No, that child only cares about one thing. That child is just like, I'm reading something about Imam Hussein. That's all that's important to that child. And that's what he's looking at, your purity. When you read this, it touched my heart very deeply, because there is purity and innocence in your voice. And what do you think Imam Hussein is listening to? What do you think? The technical correction? क्या सुर लगाया आपने वाह वाह, क्या आपने नोट तब्दील किए, क्या आपने, no, it's your intention. So I urge you, my young ones, know yourself, value yourself, know how important you are to your Imam, who is always watching you, and know that he is looking at your sincerity, at your intention. So always keep that pure, because I see so many young ones start off with such purity, but after a while, the fame starts to get to us. When you get older and people are saying, wow, you're amazing, then ego starts to come in. That's when you have to be very careful, because there is nothing greater in this day and age than to promote the message of your Imam and the message of Karbala and the Azza of Karbala. It's the most significant thing you will do in your life, but it must be pure always. Because today we will commemorate the martyrdom of two princes who are named An and Muhammad. These two young princes were the children of Hazrat Jafar Tayyar, of Hazrat Abdullah ibn Jafar Tayyar and Bibi Zainab. And Bibi Zainab is the daughter of Imam Ali, and Hazrat Abdullah is the son of Jafar Tayyar. And Hazrat Jafar Tayyar is a gentleman who was said to look very much like the Prophet, and very loved by the Prophet, and sent as an ambassador by the Prophet. And when these two princes were in Karbala on the night of Ashur, then their mother, Bibi Zainab, was talking to them. And she was telling them, my dear children, tomorrow will be a battle. She said, you are young, but this is what I have to offer. And this is what I have to offer as sacrifice and defense of our Imam, and to save the deen of Allah. Will you fight bravely for me, my children? And they said, yes, mother. They said, mother, do not worry. She said, I worry because you are young, and I do not have anyone else to send to the battlefield. And they said, oh mother, you should know that we are the grandsons of Ali al-Murtaza, of Haydar al-Qarrar, of Jafar al-Tayyar. And you should know that we will represent them, and when people see us fight tomorrow, they will remember the bravery of our grandfathers. It is said that Hazrat Abbas was the teacher of these two. He taught them how to fight. They were very brave and very strong. And despite their young age, they got on their horses. Hazrat Abbas said to them, that remember what I have taught you when you go out into the battlefield. And the two princes went forward. It is said they fought very bravely. They stood back to back, and they fought many, and they sent to hell many of the enemies of Imam Hussein from the army of Yazid. But they were very young, and they got surrounded. And when they got surrounded, the army of Yazid was saying, do not look at their youth, but know that they are know who they are the grandchildren of. Know that they are from a brave family, and if you want to fight them, then you have to surround them. Do not attack them one by one. It is said that the two had their horses back to back so they could fight all around, but eventually the army attacked in a way that the two brothers got separated. And when they got separated, now they started to receive wounds from all sides. It is said that at one point, the younger brother reached the tent of Umar ibn Sa'd and cut the ropes of that tent, making Umar ibn Sa'd flee for his life. However, the army surrounded him. The older brother was separated, but he could hear the takbir of his younger brother. He could hear Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. But there reached a point where he no longer heard the cries of his younger brother. And Hazrat An knew that Hazrat Muhammad had been wounded and now was not fighting anymore. If you go to see the grave of Hazrat An, you will see that it is many, many kilometers away from Karbala. It is said that that young lion of Jafar Tayyar and Haidar Karrar fought in a way that he made the enemies run for many, many miles. But it is said eventually they overcame him. When they overcame him, they sent their last salam to Imam Hussein, and Hazrat Abbas and Imam Hussein ran to the children because you know what they would do when they would surround them, when they would bring someone to the ground, they would immediately try to remove their head. This was how cruel they were. And Imam Hussein, Hazrat Abbas would go and save them right away. And it is said that when they reached them, these young ones still had their swords in their hand. And when they saw Imam Hussein, they said, "Oh Mawla, please tell our mother two things. One, that we did not drink any water because she had told us, do not drink water for Ali Asghar and Sakina. We reached the river, oh Imam, but we did not drink any water. And tell them that we did not stop fighting until we had come to the ground." فَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ لَا لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ مَاتَ مِنْ حُسَيْنٍ.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. कहती थी ज़ैनब, ऐ मेरे शेरो, कहती थी ज़ैनब मेरे दिलेरो, आना मोहम्मद मेरे, आना मोहम्मद, आना मोहम्मद मेरे, आना मोहम्मद, आना मोहम्मद. ख्वाब ये ज़ैनब का था, चांद सितारे मेरे, चांद सितारे, चांद सितारे, मामू पे होंगे फिदा, गोद के पाले मेरे, गोद के पाले, गोद के पाले. ख्वाब ये सच्चा हुआ, सर मेरा ऊंचा रहा, होने को शे पर फिदा, लाल मेरे शेर मेरे, चांद मेरे, आना मोहम्मद मेरे, आना मोहम्मद, आना मोहम्मद मेरे, आना मोहम्मद, आना मोहम्मद.
جعفر طیار کے خون کے عکاس ہو، خون کے عکاس، خون کے عکاس. حسن میں اکبر ہو تم، جوش میں عباس ہو، جوش میں عباس، جوش میں عباس. جنگ کے میدان میں، موت کے ارمان میں، سایہ قرآن میں، ایسے اٹھو ایسے لڑو، موت پہ تم کود پڑو. آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد. ہاں میری تاقید پر دھیان تمہارا رہے، دھیان تمہارا، دھیان. جا کے لبے نہر بھی پیاس گوارا رہے، پیاس گوارا، پیاس گوارا. دودھ نہ بخشوں گی میں، منہ بھی نہ دیکھوں گی میں، شیر کی بیٹی ہوں میں. وعدہ کرو آؤ چلو تم نہ رہو. آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد، آنا. مانا کہ پیاسے ہو تم، پیاس پہ قابو رہے، پیاس پہ قابو، پیاس. شے کے علمدار کی سانس میں خوشبو رہے، سانس میں خوشبو، سانس. بس یہ تمنا میری لاج رہے خون کی، ہے یہ وصیت میری، کھاؤ قسم جاؤ حشم ہوگا نہ کم. آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد، آنا. آن یہ کہنے لگا بھائی محمد سنو، بھائی محمد، بھائی. ایک طرف میں بڑھوں، ایک طرف تم بڑھو، ایک طرف تم، ایک طرف تم. جنگ ہو فوج ستم، جنگ کرے ایسے ہم، ماموں ہمیں دے علم، دیکھے ہمیں اماں کہیں جیتے رہیں. آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد. دونوں جری جنگ کو صورت آندھی بڑھے، صورت آندھی، صورت. نانا علی کی طرح موت پہ حاوی رہے، موت پہ حاوی، موت. مل کے جو حملہ کیا میں منا میں سرا، ایک غضب ہو گیا تیغ علی ایسے چلی دھوم مچی. آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا، آنا محمد میرے. دیکھی رہی تھی جمعہ خیمے کے در پر کھڑی، خیمے کے در پر، خیمے کے در پر. ساتھ وہیں تھے کھڑے حضرت عباس بھی، حضرت عباس، حضرت عباس. بھائی بہن ساتھ تھے، صاحب اولاد تھے، وارث اجداد تھے. کہنے لگے خوب لڑے شیر میرے. آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد. لڑتے کہاں تک بھلا پیاس کے مارے ہوئے، پیاس کے مارے، پیاس کے مارے. جلتی ہوئی خاک پر دونوں تڑپنے لگے، دونوں تڑپنے، دونوں. بھائی سے کہنے لگی فخر سے بنتے علی، سرخرو زینب ہوئی صدقے تیرے بھائی میرے لال ہوئے. آنا محمد، آنا محمد، آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد. آنا محمد نہ تھے وہ دور نایاب تھے، وہ دور نایاب، وہ دور نایاب. سرور و ریحان وہ واقف آداب تھے، واقف آداب، واقف آداب. حکم جو ماں نے دیا رخ نہ کیا نہر کا، پیاس کا صدمہ سہا، ماں نے کہا شکر خدا ہوئے فدا. آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد، آنا محمد میرے، آنا محمد. یا حسین.
دعا کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. دعا کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. میرا پیسر میرا لخت جگر پلٹ آئے. دعا کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. کہا حسین نے لیلا سے روکے اکبر کو، کہا حسین نے لیلا سے روکے اکبر کو. کروں میں پیار لپٹ کر کہو پلٹ آئے. کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. شبیہ نانا کی اکبر کہیں نظر نہ لگے. شبیہ نانا کی اکبر کہیں نظر نہ لگے. اتارو صدقہ میں اس پر کہو پلٹ آئے. دعا کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. تمہیں صدا دو سے یا کہو یہ زینب سے. تمہیں صدا دو سے یا کہو یہ زینب سے. بلا لو واسطہ دے کر کہو پلٹ آئے. دعا کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. ہے دھوپ اتنی کی شعلے اگل رہی ہے زمین. ہے دھوپ اتنی کی شعلے اگل رہی ہے زمین. برے گی پیاس کی شدت کہو پلٹ آئے. دعا کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. انتظار میں سغرا تیری مدینے میں. انتظار میں سغرا تیری مدینے میں. لگایا سو خہار کہو پلٹ آئے. دعا کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. میں دولہا اس کو بناؤں تمنا ہے یہ میری. میں دولہا اس کو بناؤں تمنا ہے یہ میری. پہناؤ صحرا سجا کر کہو پلٹ آئے. دعا کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. جوان بیٹا ہے میرا ہے منتوں والا. جوان بیٹا ہے میرا ہے منتوں والا. کوئی تو روک لو بڑھ کر کہو پلٹ آئے. دعا کرو میرا نور نظر پلٹ آئے. میرا پیسر میرا لخت جگر پلٹ آئے. حسین حسین یا حسین.
Hussein, 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 Hussein. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Rasulullah. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Amir al-Mu'mineen wa ibn Sayyid al-Wasiyin. Assalamu alayka ya ibn Fatima al-Zahra Sayyidat al-Nisa al-Alameen. Assalamu alayka ya Mawlaya wa ala ansarika mustashhadina معك جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلام عليك يا مغيث الشيات والزوار في يوم الجزاء. السلام عليك يا أنيس النفوس. السلام عليك أيها المدفون بأرض الدوس أبو الحسن علي بن موسى رضا وراز بالقدر والقضاء. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان. ألمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا قامع الكفر والطغيان. السلام عليك يا ضافي الظلم والعدوان. أجل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك ودهورك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I would also like to remind the brothers that if you have any questions for tomorrow's Q&A, you guys can write them down at the front. A volunteer will assist you with those.